Right. Hello, everyone. I am Jay Beach alongside Christopher Zunk. That plus a rare example of when trading a franchise player in a one-for-one hockey trade works positively for both teams. Why you should never make fun of an NHL player wearing a tutu. We discover our long lost, abandoned love child, and we finally put to rest the age old adage, because defense does not win championships. All that and more as the Lunchroom Syndicate presents to you the Nashville Predators all-time team.
But yes, Jay, we are talking about the Nashville Predators, a relatively newer team in the league, part of the expansion, the great expansion of the 90s and early 2000s. They have an interesting team.
I think interesting is a very polite way to do this. But before we get into the team, let's go ahead and break down how we are deciding. We are going to be looking at 12 forwards. That's going to be 4 from each of the 3 spots, left wing, right wing, and center, along with 6 defensemen, 3 lefties, 3 righties, and 2 goaltenders.
We are tearing these off into 3 different colors. We have yellow tier, which is our no-brainers, the no shits, definite all-time teamer. We have our blue tier, which is really good in the discussion, but maybe not necessarily all like big time guarantee. Then we have the silver tier, who maybe they deserve to be on this list, but really have no shot of actually making the team.
Well, unless you're the Nashville Predators.
Unless you're the Nashville Predators. Yes. In most scenarios, they don't have a shot.
So we are going to be looking through here and determining players. Some of it's going to be based off of name recognition. If either of us just really gravitate towards a certain player, we're going to be looking at games played, their point total, their penalty minutes, because we just like a tough guy. We don't really have a set criteria and grading scale. It all just comes down to facts, because this is the definitive, not at all subjective, all-time team.
Not subjective in the least bit. Pure facts, bitch.
And the first thing that we like to do here, as we're getting started, is name the face of the franchise. Christopher, who are you nominating for Smashville?
I'm going to go with Shea Weber.
Let me hear your reasons why, because I really only have one argument to kill yours, and then we're going to move on.
Fair enough. Shea Weber was a captain of the Nashville Predators for many years, was the heart and soul of their team. I know he got traded 1-for-1, which was a bit of a weird trade at the time. And the trade actually agreed with, which we'll get to that later. But, you know, he still was up until last year, until he got the injury, and basically his career is done now. Just an absolute stud of a player, great defensive player, has a rocket of shot, one of the hardest shots ever in league history. When you think of the Nashville Predators, there's very few people you think of higher than Shea Weber.
Well, yes, but we do have Mr. Predator, the original, the OG, David Legwand, with his 956 games. And while 566 points is not a bad total, when you are, the 2nd overall draft pick and you are the face of the franchise, that is 956 games of pure mediocrity, and nothing screams Nashville Predators like 100% mediocrity.
Oh, man. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right, fair enough. That does beat my argument.
David Legwand is our face of the franchise for the Nashville Predators.
Sorry, Shay. I mean, you're too good to be the face of the franchise of this one.
What position would you like to start with?
Let's start with what might be the crappiest position for a forward group we've had so far, the left wing side.
Left wing side, we are going to be looking at 4 selections. We have 5 players, and they are Kevin Fiala, Scott Hartnell, Paul Correa, James Neal, and Steve Sullivan.
There are good name players on this list. Paul Correa is an all-timer. James Neal is a solid player. Kevin Fiala is a solid player. But holy shit.
Yeah, but you say solid player. Are James Neal or Kevin Fiala all-time players? No. Well, one of them is going to be. At least one of them is going to be. Kevin Fiala, not quite a half a point per game, 97 points, 204 games. That just screams silver tier to me.
Scott Hartnell is, yeah, he's about half a point per game player as well. A little bit higher than that, actually. But he was a pest. He pestered people. It fits perfectly with what Nashville was, especially early on. I mean, he's not a great player. He's borderline for me between the blue and the silver, probably blue.
I think for this list, you get blue. He's probably somebody that I would probably prefer to keep at a silver tier, but we're going to have to be pretty generous here. And that blue tier is going to be pretty generous here for Scott Hartnell, but I agree with you there. Paul Correa. I thought he retired before Nashville ever even existed. 164 games for them. So 2 seasons. He had 161 points, so not quite a point per game. Paul Correa is an NHL great, just not for the Nashville Predators. I'm sticking with blue tier for Paul Correa.
James Neal, I'll be honest, I thought he played more in Nashville.
I thought he played more too.
That's kind of what I know him for outside of his relatively quick Pittsburgh stint. 136 points, 219 games, 77 goals. Just with this list, he's a silver tier.
Silver tier for me as well. No disagreements as usual. And finally, Steve Sullivan. I think his points per game is probably outside Paul Correa there. He's got the best points per game, but I still don't see him as much. Like if on another team, he's a silver tier. I think for this one, I can bump him up to a blue tier.
Yeah, I think it's a blue tier. I will disagree slightly though. I think if we found a guy like this on slightly better, I don't think all time. I don't think like a Detroit team. I would say yes, he would be on low tier. But I think with some of the teams we've done, I think this still be about his tier. You especially really like point per game players, especially when you get closer to once you start getting higher and higher. And I mean, there's something to be said about that. So for me, he's an easy blue tier.
Okay. So of our 3 blue tier, they are making it. Who do you have at number 1?
I think Steve Sullivan's number 1 here. I almost called him Scott Sullivan. I'm not sure why.
And number 2?
It's probably Scott Hartnell, but I'd rather it be Paul Correa.
Well, you saw no hesitation with my copy and paste up there. Now Paul Correa 3. Now we have to choose between James Neal or Kevin Fiala. I do have a way that I am leaning.
Honestly, I think it's not that hard for me. It's probably James Neal right now. A little bit more in the games played, but just has significantly more points and penalty minutes. So for me, it's James Neal.
I think the deciding factor between the two for me was we both thought James Neal was there longer. That's like the team for James Neal for me.
Yeah.
So that was my deciding factor. So
So yeah,
our 4 players on the left wing side: Steve Sullivan, Scott Hartnell, Paul Correa, James Neal.
yeah, oh, yeah. All right, I think we got the worst position out of the way potentially. I know there's gonna be another one that's pretty bad too, but it's all mediocre. But this is actually a pretty bad position, relatively speaking. But Jay, I picked the left wing, so it is up to you to decide our next position.
Well, I'm not going to improve things. I'm going to the right wing side.
Here on the right wing, we got Victor Arvidsson, J.P. Dumont, Martin Erat, Patrick Hornquist, Alexander Radulov, Jordan Tutu, and Scott Walker.
Now, Victor Arvidsson, just a really good player, but again, not somebody that I think of immediately with all-time greats. He's probably a silver tier for me.
Yeah, he's for this team, you can make an argument for blue tier again if you're being, but I mean, I would love to have him as my like second or third line wing. I mean, he's a really good player.
Yeah. But we're on all time. They should all be first line or like tough guys.
Yeah, and that's next up, JP Dumont. I've heard the name. I actually don't know much about him, but his stats are.
Man, if you don't know much about him and you're a Sabre fan too.
Was he before my time though?
Well, no, because you were a fan of that team that shall not be spoken in '99.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that's why I know his name then. I don't remember him at all in Nashville, but he has really good stats. 267 and 388 games. I mean, he's a little bit better than Victor, and I was borderline on Victor with blue tier, so I would put him at the blue tier for Nashville.
Yeah, he was one of their go-to guys earlier on. And now we are to the original Rat, Martin Erat. Just, I didn't like the guy. I didn't.
I neither.
But because I disliked him so much, he is one of the first names I think of with the Nashville Predators. So I'll give him a boost for that and go blue tier.
Yeah, his penalty minutes are a lot lower than I thought they would be, but
he should be like fucking quadrupled from where he's at.
Yeah, he's just not a guy I particularly was a big fan of either. But yeah, when you think of Nashville, this is a name that comes to mind. So can't argue blue tier. Next up, Patrick Hornquist. Okay. He's a silver tier for me. I don't have much to say on him.
Yep. Alexander Radulov. If you're wondering what I think of Radulov in Nashville, take a look at his picture. He left Nashville to go back over to the KHL, where he won some championships over there. He's a silver tier.
That was really good for him.
Kind of a slap in the face putting him even on this list to Nashville.
Yeah. I mean, I remember him leaving and coming back. I don't remember how many years later it was. It was a couple. He came back to Montreal first, and then Montreal was like, oh, yeah. And then, then he went to Dallas for after that. He never went back to KHL, but
I think he went from the NHL to the K to the NHL to the K and then back.
Yeah. Oh, I thought
but I'm not.
I'm not so sure on that. I thought he went just because I remember thinking because he played well in Montreal. I was like, man, why did Montreal re-sign him? And I remember at the time Dallas signed him. I was like, he's a really good fit for that team. But yeah, he's a silver tier with Nashville. I could be wrong though.
Well, I am looking it up before we move on.
Yep, no problem.
Nashville, KHL, Nashville, KHL, Montreal, Dallas.
Okay. So he went from Nashville to KHL twice, which I didn't know that. That's another guy that I can't particularly stand. But if you're thinking of Nashville, especially early days, Jordan Tutu. I don't like him, but he's probably a blue tier for this team.
Yeah, he's a name that I think of right away with Nashville, but the same. I didn't like him, mean son of a bitch, but also a dirty son of a bitch. When we were saying, man, I thought Erat's penalty minutes would be higher. Well, 2-2s were.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're really close to the games played for Erat is equal to the penalty minutes for 2-2, where the games played for 2-2 is equal to the penalty minutes for Erat. They're close to being interchangeable there.
And they played, I believe they played a lot of the same team at the same time. They're
God, I can't believe those two shitheads are both going to be on this team.
I know, but it's when you think about the Nashville Predators, it makes sense. I mean, especially those early days, and it was just not a. It's kind of Nashville's history. Their forward group, they've never been in their entire existence have not had a very good forward. They struggled finding good forwards, like truly good, legitimate forwards. But
Scott Walker, I do like Scott Walker. Again, his points per game is not great here, but I do think he is probably the best player that we have over here on the right wing side to choose from, but still not going higher than a blue tier.
No. Also, that jersey's ugly on Scott Walker. I don't like that. Wow,
they're ugly hideous on everybody.
Yeah, it's not because on him. It's just that jersey's fucking ugly.
Do you agree with Walker at number one?
Yeah, I'm fine with Walker at number one. I think if you're a Nashville fan, you're an Erat fan, you probably could make a case, but I'm not going to because fuck him.
So who do you have it to?
JP Dumont.
And I'm gonna take the fucking Rat over 2-2, but so the nothing special continues on right wing as we have Scott Walker, JP Dumont, Martin Erat, and Jordan 2-2 as our all-time Nashville Predators. Where would you like to head off to next?
Let's go to the left defensive side. Let's get a defensive out of the way.
Left defense. Okay. Well, we finally have some talent over here. This is where Nashville starts to shine back to the defensive side. We are going to be choosing from Mark Eden, Matthias Ekholm, Dan Hamhuis, Roman Josi, Ryan Suter, and Kimmo Timonen.
It's a good group. Mark Eaton, really, really good defenseman. Doesn't put up a lot of points, 45 in 286 games, but a really solid defensive defenseman. But I mean, if you want to put him at blue tier, it's fine, but I mean, he'd be silver for me.
He's a blue tier for me. I liked Mark Eden. You know, I'm a fan of those defensive defensemen. Matthias Ekholm is supposed to be a little bit more of a hybrid, and he doesn't have the points that I would want from that type of guy. But 586 games there thus far, right?
Yep.
But Ekholm, I'm going to stick with the blue tier for Ekholm.
Okay. Another pretty good defensive defenseman, Dan Hamhuis, who I didn't realize played 600 games in Nashville. I barely remember him in Nashville, but he played a long time there. 174 points. Mark Eaton's a blue tier. He's probably a blue tier for me then.
Oh, okay. I'd take Mark Eaton over Dan Hamhuis, but
no, I mean, he's played longer, so I'll give him benefit of the doubt. I'd probably take Mark Eaton as well, but I'll give some benefit of the doubt. I'm being generous.
Here's somebody I'm not going to be generous with. Roman Josi, like just a straight up bum. He shouldn't even be on this list. I can't get more of a silver than that. And because of that, he is yellow. Our first yellow player, Roman Josi, he has a Norris trophy to his name. Puts up the points, real solid defensively. Just one of the best currently playing.
Yeah, that one very good two-way player too. Norris, I didn't realize he won the Norris Trophy in 2020, but it makes sense. I mean, he's that damn good. Ryan Suter, And I was initially shocked by 542. To me, he's a yellow tier with Nashville as well. Just a really good player. Thought you have slightly more points. I know he wasn't the biggest point producer in Nashville or even in Minnesota. I liked him. I thought it was a bit of a mistake for them not to re-sign him personally.
And then finally, we have Kimmo Timonen. Now, I know I have a Norris Trophy winner, so I'm not going to make a lot of fans with this, but Kimmo Timonen is the best left-handed shot defenseman in Nashville history. There early on, he is a shot blocking machine, defensive defenseman, and still has 301 points in 573 games. Kimmo Timonen is yellow tier.
Okay. We had no silver tiers in this group.
Yeah, because we're on defense.
Yeah. Although you would have made the case for Dan Hamhuis being silver tier, and I probably would make the case of both of them being silver tier personally, but understandable that they're both blue as well. So.
Okay, who do you have at number one?
Well, I would put Roman Josi number one, but you may have a pretty strong case for Kimmo Timonen. So I would imagine that probably Kimmo should be number one then.
He's my number one, but as I said, I'm not going to be making any fans with it. I think everybody else would be looking at going, Yosi's easily number one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, for me, he was number one at my initial thought.
I'll throw some recognition over with that, but again, Kimmo Timonen, huge fan of. So he's going to come in at number two, which puts a guy like Ryan Suter down at three, which gives you a fucking solid left defensive core.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Damn good left core.
Well, if we're going to do left defense, let's just stick with the good, because that felt a lot better than that forward group. Let's move over to the right defensive spot. And who we looking at over on right D?
We have Ryan Ellis, Seth Jones, Kevin Klein, PK Subban, Shea Weber, and Marek Zidlicki.
Oh man, this another really good group here. Ryan Ellis, just a pure like heavy Phoenix beard going on there. I am a big fan of Ryan Ellis. Nashville is a big fan of Ryan Ellis. Ryan Ellis, yellow tier.
He's a damn good defenseman. Seth Jones. He's probably a silver tier in Nashville. Got traded early on his career in the Ryan Johansson trade.
Yeah, he hadn't reached what Seth Jones is going to be yet, but they needed some star power in Nashville, because we already talked about you can't get any in Nashville, and it still didn't work out for them. I think they came out on the short end of that trade. But during his time in Nashville, Seth Jones over tier.
And it's weird that people hate him now, Seth Jones. Like, really pay him? I got to hate his contract more than anything, but he's making like $9.5 million a year. But he does lead Chicago in points, so or at least through maybe the whole team. Anyway, Kevin Klein. Just a solid defenseman is about the only thing I know about him. I figure his penalty minutes were a lot higher. That's kind of why I hesitated. I mean, he's a silver tier for me, but
Kevin Klein in here for me really was just like a measuring stick type player to let you know like how good the rest of these guys are. So I mean, I don't usually go out of my way to throw dragon fodder at anybody, but you know, Kevin Klein is dragon fodder.
Fair.
PK Subban is one of the best defensemen to ever play. He might be my favorite defenseman that has ever played. I don't have a definitive ranking for him, but he's definitely somebody that I think of straight away. he's a yellow tier player, hands down, here in Nashville. I went with the picture that I did because that's just the kind of guy PK is. Like, he shows up to Nashville, he's not just bringing you a top caliber player back on the blue line. He is bringing you somebody who is dedicated to the community. He is bringing somebody who has a lot of character. And in hockey, I don't know why that we just don't promote hockey players well. The NHL does not do that. He's a huge character, and I think he needs more credit for that. Really love PK Subban. I could go on for a while, but I'll stop there. He's a yellow tier.
Well, we mentioned, speaking of PK Subban and our next man, Shea Weber. The first thing I will say is Shea Weber is an obvious yellow tier for me. He was my face of the franchise candidate. But them two, you mentioned it in your teaser, these were PK and Shea were traded for each other. 1-to-1, a super rare trade just in general. But then you got two right-handed defensemen traded like that. It was a pretty wild trade. I remember at the time, for the first few years, it looked pretty clear that Nashville had the win there, but
well, yeah, because PK came over, was a Norris finalist. Did he win?
I think he did.
Norris in 2013.
Oh, it was before his time in Nashville, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was quite a number of years. Maybe he finished like number 2 that first year potentially, but
okay. But yeah, he was a Norris finalist. They went to the finals with Subban. Like, it looked like he was paying immediate dividends. Yes, he's no longer with Nashville, and Shea Weber is still in Montreal. And who came out on top in that trade? They both did.
Yeah, it ended up, and I think we could call the trade. I know Nashville got pieces, and there's that
they're still up, some more up in the air. And
yeah.
I mean, maybe they hit like a Wayne Gretzky type player with something in the future with it. But
I mean,
it's pretty safe to say this trade is complete.
Yeah, and when you think about it, Nashville got the immediate dividends. Montreal, kind of surprising for me because I thought it maybe go the other way. That Shea Weber was older by a few years at the time of the trade. Well, I mean, still is, but he was closer to 30 than PK was at the time. Just what Shea Weber, what he meant to Montreal, I think you see it this year with him being out, how much he, along with a couple other players, but yeah, I mean, it was a crazy trade that worked both ways, and you just don't have that very much anymore in sports, and it's kind of cool to see.
Yeah. And then finally, we have Marek Zidlicki. I'm really close to putting Zidlicki at a yellow tier also. I think I'm just short of that, going blue tier for Zidlicki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was where my thoughts were with blue tier. For me, he's quite a bit below the 3 we have in the yellow spot.
I think that's where it comes in also. For me, is just a direct comparison to the 3 that we have. He falls a little behind, but still a top-notch defenseman.
That doesn't necessarily mean, just for the record, that we're only limiting the top tier to the amount of selections we have. We have had many times where we've had more of the top tier than we have selections. I just want to make that clear. But I don't think
there's a gap here.
Yeah, there's a noticeable gap.
So who do you have at number 1? Obviously, you went your face of the franchise.
Yeah,
Weber.
It's on ice is Shea Weber for this team. But we've talked about on many different occasions now between our NHL and NFL videos about character. And I'm not saying Shea Weber's a bad guy. He probably is. I'm sure he's a great dude. You just don't hear about it. Again, lending to your point of the NHL being terrible on promoting their players properly. But just PK Subban's charitable and just overall goodness of him. I know that's a great sentence. It's hard for me not to put him at number one for that reason alone. On ice, Shea Weber. Overall, it's kind of PK.
See, I wouldn't even go on ice Shea Weber. I think on ice it's kind of a wash. Shea Weber had the games played. He had the tenure in Nashville, but I think PK stepped in and made such an immediate impact and is really one of the few superstar guys in the NHL, and he was that during his tenure in Nashville. And Ryan Ellis, forgotten about here, but he's still on here. Don't worry.
Yeah. Ryan Ellis is a third line defenseman here, and you're like, he's the forgotten one. He's pretty damn good too.
Our third pairing defense here is Suter and Ellis.
I know. It's a shame that we can't have Ellis and Weber and Suter. They had a top line defense of Weber and Suter at one point. And Suter left first, which was the sad part. So we never got PK and Suter, but damn, that's a good top line.
Okay, where are we heading off to next?
Let's go center. Let's keep goalie for last.
And center. Who do we have?
We have Jason Arnott, Chris Beach, Mike Fisher, Philip Forsberg, Kalle Yarkrock. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly or not.
It's Yarncroc.
Ryan Johansson, Greg Johnson, David Legwand, Craig Smith, and Colin Wilson.
Whoo, buddy. Jason Arnott is a solid player, a real gritty player. If we were putting together like an all-time grit team, I think he would be in high consideration for it.
Yep.
He's a silver tier player for me, though.
Interesting. I thought his games play would be higher because it's definitely where I know him from.
Really, for me, it's New Jersey.
Yeah. I remember him more in Nashville, admittedly. But yeah, I mean, for an all-time team purposes, it's hard to argue anything more than silver for him.
No, even looking at it, I mean, his points per game is pretty good. I gotta go blue.
Yeah, it was 229, 275.
I gotta go blue.
So although you
good points in Nashville. Yeah.
Although you did put someone silver tier with better points per game earlier in the left wing side, so it's all good. Next up is the greatest player ever to play, Chris Beach.
Well, it could have been them, but he doesn't know how to spell worth a rat's ass. Worth a Martin E. rat's ass.
Is there something lower than the silver tier? Look at that name. Who the hell spells their? I hate the name Chris spelled with a K. I fucking hate it. And then on top of that, talk about Beach. Talk about that name.
What about it? It's what the fuck's going on with there?
Who the hell spells it with two E's? Look right behind you over your left shoulder. Sorry, whatever shoulder that is.
It's this one.
Yeah.
A chicken wing point to it.
Yeah. See how that's spelled? Yeah, you can't see the B, but you see the each.
Yeah, you drop the B off of beach, you still have each. You drop it off of Chris Beach and you have nothing. Mm-hmm. You're left with nothing other than that third grade bowl cut that he sports.
That's bad. That's a bad area. So what's lower than silver? Give him, I don't know, hot pink or something. I don't know.
Yellow tier, Mike Fisher.
Was not prepared for that. Mike Fisher.
What did you say? Hot pink for him?
I just went with the color.
Chris Beach, hot pink.
That if that doesn't spell Nashville.
For our abandoned love child.
When you spell your name like that. Back to real players. Mike Fisher. Another guy that I just think of Nashville. I think he is engraved in it for me for Nashville. So for that reason alone, he's probably a blue tier. It's hard to go higher than that with him, but just somebody that was a consistent presence in Nashville. Again, surprisingly low games played compared to what I thought he was. But
well, in terms of talent, the next player up is Philip Forsberg, who I think has the highest cap and is the most skilled forward that Nashville has ever had. Blue tier.
Yeah, he's never reached that cap, and he's not quite reached that potential. I think a lot of that is just the system that Nashville plays in. It is hard to believe that. It would be very curious to see him if he never got traded from Washington, where his career would be. He really wouldn't be playing with Ovechkin that much because I think they would kept Backstrom with Ovechkin anyway. But still a great player, 385 points in 497 games. He's still damn good. Next up, Calle Yarncroc, 508 games played, 211. He's a silver tier for me. He's nothing special. Like to me, he's nothing special, but he's played a long time there. I'll give him that.
Ryan Johansson, who Nashville picked up for Seth Jones, and they were all about the trading superstar for superstar. This one did not work out very well for them. They are in contract hell with this player. Otherwise, a perfectly fine player, just not for what they're paying him. Man, off of name recognition, I'd go blue tier, but I want more from him, so it pushes me towards silver.
Yeah, and I think I'm on the border, so I'll go with either way. But for me, I was considering knocking him down tier because he just, for what he was supposed to be. Now, yes, he's not as talented as Philip Forsberg, but in terms of pure talent, he's probably the second best on this list. He's a guy that everyone thinks is ultra talented, and he is. But even in Columbus and with Nashville, it just hasn't worked out. In Columbus, it was, well, he didn't really work out well with Tortorella and this and this. He's never reached his potential. And at this point in his career, he never will.
I want him in discussion for making the team, not necessarily making, but in the discussion. So I'll go blue tier.
He has 271 points in 400 games. That's not nothing. You know, it's better than Mike Fisher, and in terms of in points per game. So I mean there is something to that. But
next up we have Greg Johnson. Wait, I think I made a mistake here. Is that Yarncroc again? I think that might be Yarncroc again. Yeah, that's Yarncroc again. He's silver tier.
Oh, I get it now.
No, Greg Johnson has the captaincy. I kind of want to boost him up, but more so because he died at a young age, and so I feel kind of disrespectful. But that's not what this is. You don't get bonus points for dying. Wow.
That might be one of the inadvertently harshest things you've ever said on stream.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong though. That's the point. I mean, just because someone, dies at a young age doesn't necessarily mean that when you're talking about all-time team, doesn't mean they automatically get boosted up. And it's a fine line. You're walking a fine line with that. You don't mean to be disrespectful, which is the point. But you're just going off of what he did in Nashville ultimately, or what he meant to Nashville in some cases, like a PK Subban. But he's a silver tier for me.
Or I mean, when we say PK Subban, I mean, really, when we're like what he meant, and not just to the team, but to the league. I think still the best example of players that we've talked about throughout these videos is still Chris Kluwe.
Yeah, absolutely. And
who I still think we need to go back and change our fucking face of the franchise for.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the video's done. So I want to re-upload that a third time.
Re-upload number 2.
No, I mean yeah, exactly. The Chris Kluwe thing, we take into account how good of a person they are. If they're a really good fucking person, then they have a great shot making the team just for that alone. So yeah. Next up is your face of the franchise, and the one we ultimately, Mr. Mediocrity, David Legwand. I guess he'd have to be a yellow tier for face of the franchise, or is he mediocre enough? He's blue tier. He's blue tier for me.
He's blue tier. He's the prime example of blue tier. If I would love to see David Legwand, like I would love to see these numbers with him playing on Detroit and trying to argue him onto the team and not be the default go-to guy on the team. Because I do think he was a heck of a player.
Him, Mike Fisher, Erat, Tutu, and there's one other one. Who am I missing? Who am I forgetting about?
Hartnell?
Maybe Hartnell. Yeah, probably Hartnell more than Sullivan. Those 5 guys more or less played together for a long time in Nashville. And to their credit, Nashville was pretty good. Relative, I mean, they were always in the playoffs. I wouldn't say pretty good. They were mediocre. They were never awful necessarily, but they were never good. They didn't really get good until, I mean, later on down the line in the 2010s. I mean, they made a finals. They won a President's Trophy at one point, possibly 2, but I think they only won. They had moments where they were legitimately good, but usually it wasn't. This is what their team is. That's why we named him face of the franchise, because his career epitomizes what Nashville's been in the league. Which, would you rather be that or Buffalo the last 10 years? I don't know.
All right. So what do you got on Craig Smith?
Craig Smith, another guy that's just there. 661 games played. Actually, really good, solid, a pretty solid guy. I mean, he's probably blue tier here, but I mean, he's a good player.
Yeah, look how happy he is that we just gave him a blue tier.
He is thrilled.
He is happy as shit. And finally, the last player that we have is Yarncroc.
Why is there 3 guys that are so fucking close to the same goddamn point? Like almost identical.
Not just the
line, just their entire line.
The games played. You look at the goals, it's 93, 94, 95. It's their style of play, everything. Like, didn't work out. Let's try again. Didn't work out. Let's try again. Fucking give up on it already. Silver tier, Colin Wilson.
He was on the cup team.
So what names are we taking up from this? So are we going with the face of the franchise number 1, or are we going with the most skilled guy number 1?
Probably the most skilled for me. I go Philip Forsberg first.
Forsberg, first selection. Legwand, second selection. I'm probably at Smiley Smith.
Smiley Smith. I was at Mike Fisher. I just think of him more for Nashville, but I'm honestly down. I think I've eliminated Ryan Johansson. I think I'm down to those 3 for the final 2 spots.
So Johansson is out for you?
Yeah. That's my kind of punishment for him not reaching his potential, is he's not on this team. Yeah. Oh man, Craig Smith's totals. I don't know. It's just
he has 200 more games than Fisher.
He does.
Their points per game are just about the same. Fisher has more penalty minutes. Fisher wore the C. And I can't even just go, well, if Fisher's going up, then Craig Smith is going fourth, because we do still have Jason Arnott there, who, again, wore the C, close to a point per game.
Mm-hmm. I will be honest, Mike Fisher, Jason Arnott was probably my next two, and then Craig Smith was behind
And I was
them.
at Craig Smith and then Jason Arnott. So I think Arnott's the fourth on here, which is weird that we're putting 4 on there and then we're shooting for 3.
That we
So
are.
one of our 3s is not on here.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, neither one of them should realistically be on any all-time team, but hey, it is what it is.
Well, I am gonna stick with the theme here, which I think I give Craig here a heads up. I am going odd because this team is odd as fuck.
Fair enough.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, shoot. You're up. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Tied. 1, 2, 3, shoot. I'm up. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Damn.
You're like, I gotta change it sometime. Well,
no, I lost Mike
your
Fisher.
mediocrity does not make this team as our 4 centers are Philip Forsberg, David Legwand, Greg Smith, Jason Arnott.
Forward group sucks.
Man. And off to goalie.
There's some good players here, thank God. Not a lot.
Nope.
Because this franchise is young, but because a lot of these guys played for fucking forever.
Yeah. And I won't get into that. I don't want to spoil it more than just looking at the names, Will. But who do we have?
We have Jeff Dunham, Mike Dunham, Dan Ellis, Pekka Rinne, UC Saros, and Tomas Vokoun. I really like their Eastern Europeans.
I didn't even get the Jeff Dunham bit there, but I still put the dummy in. And done. Perfectly fine goaltender. He's on here because of a lack of options. They just haven't had it many because they've had a couple that have played a long time, and Nashville hasn't been around long. He's still a silver tier, though.
Yeah. Dan Ellis, another. I mean, less wins and less games played than Mike Dunham, but I think he's a silver tier here. I mean, he's a solid goaltender, but
between the two, Ellis gets the edge for me.
Yes, I agree.
Pekka Rinne, another guy who could have been in discussion for face of the franchise, which means we had 3 players really that were in contention for face of the franchise. We have 2 yellow tier and a blue tier. The yellow tier that's going to get the first spot wasn't mentioned. Then we have the yellow tier who gets the second spot for his position, losing to a guy who gets a blue tier and the second spot for his position.
And that's why he's perfect for the face of the franchise. If we were going realistically, if you're going for face of the franchise, I mean with the player recognition, Pekka and Shea would have been the choices, but
I don't know, man. Yeah, like
that's understandable why
time for David Legwand.
Yeah,
like,
and he is no well known in Nashville. So
yeah, I even though I kind of got it off of a joke, I still stand by David Legwand.
No, I think there's a legitimate argument to be had with him because he played a long time there. He was if you ask Nashville fans, and he's probably one of the first players they're going to name. All time purposes. But Pekka Rinne, though, is a damn good goaltender. Was a damn good goaltender. Finally retired after last year. Just a fucking brick wall back there, man. And yeah, he's a damn good goalie.
Yeah. Brick wall there for a long time. Which meant Uzi Saros took a long time before he was able to come on in. So he's not there yet. Will he be? I don't know. Because 155 games there. A lot of those are as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
Well, really, all of them.
Well, until this year. Until this year, yes.
Yes, but this year's stats are not included.
Oh, well, they would be pretty damn good, though, because he's been one of the reasons why they're in contention for a high playoff spot. UC Saros is the blue tier right now, but
yeah,
he's damn good.
Yes, and I don't know if he's still wearing them. I think he actually got rid of them, which, is going to bump you further down here if he did. Those fucking all yellows are sick.
A lot of yellow on that, though. I am not that big of a yellow fan, but they are sick pads.
I love them.
They are quite. He definitely. You love the monochrome though, especially the pads, especially yellow and white.
Yeah, for me it was all white, and then it was all white up until Marc-Andre Fleury, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I made a mistake. I should have been all yellow.
UC's is still only a blue tier for now, but I got a feeling he might be in the yellow tier by the time his career over. But will he pass our next man, the first initial franchise goaltender, Thomas Vokoun?
Man, it's a tall order because, again, he's got 155 games on here as a backup. Thomas Vokoun, 447 as a starter. So Saros, what would you say, 25? So he's only 25 games into starter stats versus 447. So he's got a long way to go. Thomas Vokoun is a yellow tier player.
Mm-hmm. And we might see him again in a future bit. Have we done?
Yeah, he won't make the Florida team.
No, but he's going to be on the list, most likely.
We got 2 standouts.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying he's going to make the team, but I'm just saying we're going to see him on another list.
But I'm assuming you agree that Pekka Rinne is 1, Vokoun is 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly the win percentage for Vokoun's a little low, but he did start his career on some not so great Nashville teams. But he was also some of the reasons why they were only good because of him.
So that will finish it up. And as we come on over and take a look at our entire lineup, we have Pekka Rinne and Thomas Vokoun in net. In front of them, Roman Josi and PK Subban, 2 Norris Trophy winners. We have Kimmo Timonen and Shea Weber as our second pairing, and Ryan Suter and Ryan Ellis as our third pairing. Phenomenal defense. What do we have at forward?
We have on our first line, well, it's not as good as the offense, or it's not as good as the defense, but we have Steve Sullivan, Philip Forsberg, and Scott Walker. Our second line is Scott Hartnell, David Legwand, and JP Dumont. Then we have Old Man Paul Correa, Craig Smith, and the Martin Erat. And we finish with James Neal, Jason Arnott, and Jordan Tutu.
I mean, it's a tough fourth line.
Yeah, I don't want to face that fourth line. That's going to kick your ass. Honestly, if you play the game against this team, it's like a 1-0 game. You're going to win because you're going to score the 1 because they ain't scoring shit.
I started from the back end going up because, well, man, you look at what we have on the back end, you're like, man, this is going to be a top team. And that quickly, I mean, first line quickly shoots to a shit, never mind. This is a bottom fucking team.
Yeah.
And I know they haven't been around as long, and I don't want to hear that they've been around long enough to have a forward. And
Yeah.
really, again, I'd like to try to argue David Legwand onto a team. He doesn't have a handout spot though.
No,
There
he
is
doesn't.
not a single top tier forward on this team.
No, there's not. And to your point, when you think of teams that are similar age as Nashville, teams that came in around the same time period, Minnesota has at least, they have like Mika Koivu and Marion Gaborik to some extent. Columbus obviously has Rick Nash, who is fucking Rick Nash. They have an all-time player on their team. Even Atlanta / Winnipeg pre-Winnipeg days had Ilya Kovalchuk and Danny Heatley, you know. So I mean, like they still had great players, at least in the forward spot. I don't know about the rest of their team. It's gonna be, but yeah, this might be our worst forward group going forward. It's gonna be hard to beat this team for worst forward group. What saves them from being in the running for the very bottom spot is how good their back end is.
I don't know if it saves them from being in the running. They might still be in the running.
Yeah, I said what might save them. I think I did say what might save them. But they're going to be down there. I mean, they're not getting out. Even if they don't make the worst team on our list, they're going to be in that second the worst tier, almost for sure. I'd be shocked if they weren't.
Yeah, we're going to have to come across a dumpster. We're going to have to come across 6 dumpster fires to keep them out of that.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's going to be the case, and this is not a good team. I thought when we were going to do this, when we came into this, last week I mentioned, I thought, I was like, oh, maybe this team's going to be better. And a lot of that was, I was thinking about the defense and their back end. I did not anticipate how bad this forward group was going to end up being.
Well, even when we did Calgary, like, we were thinking, mid-tier, and then we started getting into it. Oh, I forgot about this guy, and I forgot about this guy, and I forgot about this guy. And then they turned into like, holy shit, they're a great team. I was kind of hoping for the same here with Nashville on, hey, we just forgot about this guy, and we forgot about this guy. And really, the one that I forgot about was Jason Arnott. And I didn't really realize Paul Kariya had played for them, but not standouts.
Yeah, and that's Paul Kariya, end of career Paul Kariya, which he still was almost a point per game player, but not what he was with the Ducks, obviously. Yeah, I agree. It's a really bad group for all-time purposes.
And we have to disrespect him by playing him with the fucking E-Rat.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Smith is over there laughing at him. So do you agree with our list? Disagree with our list? Let us know below, and let us know who your favorite Nashville Predator is, and we'll tell you why you're wrong. But thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Deuces.